All right, everyone. Well, thank you for joining us. It is 5:30 and we will get started. This is a public information meeting for the Nine Springs Valley Interceptor Phase 2 project for Madison Metropolitan Sewerage District. We are recording this meeting and it will be posted on the project page on our website here in the next few days. If you have any questions, you can feel free to either hold them to the end or drop them in the chat and we will get to them at the end. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our project team to run through the presentation we've prepared for tonight.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Amanda. Just as she said, this is the Madison Metro Sewerage District, Nine Springs Valley Interceptor, Phase 2 Public Informational Meeting number 1. So we can go to the next slide. And this is just a quick overview of everything we'll cover today. Go over some of the background for the project, different pipe route alternatives, and the considerations that went into each one of those alternatives. And then we'll cover the schedule for Phase 2 before saving time at the end for any questions or comments anyone may have. And here are the major contacts for the project. That's me on top. I'm Tyler Micklick, project engineer with MMSD, and I'll be the main point of contact for this project. That's my information there on screen. I believe this information is also on the project web page that we'll show towards the end of this. And otherwise up there is Matt Wathke's information as well with MSA, and I'll pull him in with the more technical details or any questions that I can't answer. And here's a bunch of information about the district, who we are and what we do. Originally established in 1930, which means we're coming up on 100 years, pretty quick. Today, we service 24 communities in Dane County. You can see those, or some of those highlighted in the image to the right. Our project area is in the yellow circle towards the bottom left of that screen, an area, servicing parts of the city of Fitchburg, town of Verona, and also Madison. Our service pretty much extends Middleton to Cottage Grove, to Forest, all the way down Pleasant Springs in the bottom there. That is 435,000 individuals and businesses, an area served by 150 miles of pipe, which all totals to 37 million gallons per day at our Nine Springs wastewater treatment plant out on Moreland Road. You want to go to the next slide. This is an overview of the Nine Springs Valley Interceptor system and the projects that we currently have. Phases 1, 3, and 4 should be handled by my coworker Rachel. But today we're here to talk about Phase 2, which is kind of the bottom left corner of this image, highlighted in orange. It extends kind of along its Highway 151, ending at Pump Station 12, labeled there. So to go into some more detail on this project and the background, I'll hand it off to Matt to talk about it more.
All right, thank you, Tyler. Matt Wathke, a project engineer with MSA Professional Services. Really, this project, there's kind of two factors that we have to consider on as to why we're looking at upgrading this part of the corridor. The first part, capacity. Madison and the surrounding communities are all growing. That means more and heavier flows that we need to deal with. These pipes were installed, I believe, back in the 60s, are not quite up to those flows and demand some upsides as a result. The other component is, again, they're old pipes, concrete. There's a variety of different problems that just their age and the deterioration over that time period have been causing. The joints, the pipes, there's certain instances where there's offsets, there's leaks, infiltration of the surrounding groundwater. This section's right along Goose Lake. The water table's high, things can infiltrate in and out of the pipe, and that leads to material being deposited at some of these grade breaks along the pipe and just bring in extra flows that we don't necessarily want to be dealing with. So capacity and condition of the pipe are kind of two of the main driving factors as to why we're looking at improving this corridor. As far as what we're looking at for improvements, we looked at a total of 6 alternatives, 5 main ones with 1 variation on alternative 2. Really kind of all within, mostly within the, either between Goose Lake and US Highway 18. Alternative 1, trying to keep as far away from the lake and the path as possible, puts us between an existing force main and the highway. Alternative 2 kind of moves us between that force main and then between the Military Ridge State Trail. Alternative 3 puts us directly underneath the trail. 4 is along kind of the south and east side of the trail, closer to the lake. And then a bit different from the others, another alternative 5 kind of puts us on the other side of the highway. Each have their own positives and negatives. Some common traits between them on the northern section of the project would be alternatives 1, 2, and 5 all show a crossing underneath the path. This community is very heavily invested in maintaining the Military Ridge State Trail for pedestrian and bike use. These options would show going through the path, but we would be able to avoid any sort of long-term impacts to that by boring underneath instead of ripping open the path. All of these options also maintain another side connection that we have from the city of Fitchburg here, and all of these would connect to the existing pump station 12 just off of Fitchburg Road. Towards the south end of the project, again, it's all kind of within the same corridor. The majority of the options would be connecting on the south and east side of the highway by manhole 12-109, kind of at the bottom of your screen there. Every option will be taking a connection from an existing force main relief that comes from Dane County lands, kind of from the south, that was installed in 2024. Even the option on the other side of the highway. So those were, in a nutshell, the alternatives that we were looking pretty much where in this corridor do we want to fall, and what different considerations do we need for each route, the impact of each one's, the vegetation along the corridor, impacts to the path and the pedestrian bridge itself, their impacts to Goose Lake. The existing line actually has a bit that runs under it. How do we deal with that? So a lot of different factors were all kind of considered when going between these alternatives. This is a bit of a kind of simplified alternatives matrix, kind of highlighting some of those different things. Like we said, when going through each of these alternatives, the Military Ridge State Trail, which options allow us to maintain that for pedestrian traffic, which options would require us to look at a long-term disturbance and detours of that route, which ones would have the biggest impacts to the lake. And then with the different landowners involved, we have WISDOT right away, we have the DNR corridor based around the state trail. So all of these kind of came together in a matrix similar to this, with red kind of being your major negative impacts. Going through this analysis and in coordination with with Wisconsin Department of Transportation, with the Wisconsin DNR, and between MSA and the district, the somewhat preferred alternative at this point would be alternative 2, which would be the option kind of going between just within WISDOT's right away along the border between there and the Military Ridge State Trail corridor, between the existing forest main and the path, keeping us away from Goose Lake and keeping the Department of Transportation happy, keeping us away from the highway as much as possible, and also being able to maintain Military Ridge State Trail open to pedestrian traffic outside of maybe some intermittent impacts to pedestrian traffic, but not a long-term closure or detour. So that's kind of the project in a nutshell. The different alternatives, kind of what led to this project being a necessity, given the condition of and age of the pipe, the problems we've had to face. Moving forward, we have our tentative schedule. Field work has already been preliminarily or pretty much completed, which includes the soil borings, surveys of the wetlands, the trees, field survey for the actual design. Preliminary design has already been started. We're working through that in coordination with the district. We're all at the first of the informational meetings, and kind of looking forward. We have, real estate to work through any long and short-term easements we have with any of the landowners, primarily Wisconsin DNR through the Military Ridge State Trail Corridor, with final design kind of wrapping up somewhere between July and November. Permitting and bidding to follow later this year, followed by, again, another informational meeting to talk about more direct construction impacts, what it will look like as far as any interruptions to pedestrian traffic, that kind of thing, with construction plan early 2026. With that, I'll hand it back to Tyler to talk about the
Sure.
webpage and updates.
Yep, here on screen is the webpage that we put together for this project. The address or URL is up in the title there, but you can also access this page through our Mad Sewer website under current construction projects. And this page has an overview for the project, more information related to phase 2. I think actually in all the phases of the Nine Springs Valley Interceptor project. And down in the bottom right, there's a sign up area. You can enter your email to receive project updates. You'll get an email whenever this project page is updated. So if you're looking for the most up-to-date information, that's the best way. Get it delivered directly to your inbox. Then I think our final slide. I just want to thank everyone for their attention for this meeting and open the floor to any questions or comments anyone may have for the group.
So you can either unmute yourself to ask a question if you have one, otherwise you can throw it in the chat. And if you don't have any questions, that's okay too. Feel free to hop off. We will be reposting this recording to that project webpage that Tyler shared. And then I also encourage everyone to sign up if you're interested in receiving notifications. So we'll wait a moment, see if anyone has questions. And if not, we'll post this and you're free to go about your evening.
I wonder if this will impact water flow around Goose Lake or like under the bridge or in any other way.
Do you want this one, Tyler, or me?
You gotta answer for that one.
In the short term, kind of everything between the highway and the path we're anticipating as part of our construction corridor. That's where the equipment will be running. We'll be stockpiling materials. We'll have the open trench for the pipe and the structure installations. All of that will have, we'll be required to have through our permitting through the county and the state for erosion control to be, self-contained as far as, containing any construction site runoff, exposed soils, that kind of stuff. In the long term, it will all be restored to not the same, but very similar condition. The existing drainage patterns will be maintained. Because ultimately, when all is said and done, the only thing you'll see on the surface when it comes to this this pipe will be the manhole structures, which there are existing ones out there currently. But during construction, there may be some impacts, but we have to ultimately let water flow, but still contain any erosion within our site because no one wants it to end up in the lake. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll chime in on that just because I'm Lisa Coleman. I'm the Director of Engineering. I know there's larger questions about, stormwater flows around Goose Lake and those sort of things. And this project doesn't have any long-term impact on any of those things.
Are we losing all the trees between Military Ridge State Trail and the highway?
In the short term, yes. We're still working through the details to see if there's any trees within that part of the corridor that we may want to try and work around and save. We did have an arborist go through both sides of the military trail. Their kind of general assessment was that there was many more undesirable species in the section between the trail and the highway, quite a bit of emerald ash borer. So between all of the alternatives, if they were to pick a side, they recommended going where we're at. In order to provide room with, again, like I mentioned, all the kind of the operations that come with construction, the equipment storage, moving around the site, stockpiling soil, what have you. We do anticipate removing all or most of the vegetation through there for the duration of construction. Once we have the pipe finished, we will be putting vegetation back in. What that will look like will have to be kind of coordinated with both the district and the DNR, as they have jurisdiction through the corridor. It won't look exactly the same, but we don't plan on like leaving it wide open to the highway after we're done. So there will be vegetation going back in, but what's there now will be likely all removed to allow us to work, and then put something that's a bit more desirable back.
I wonder how big the trees will be that will be replanted, and or if like a wall was considered there.
Again, details on the vegetation will have to be hammered out with the DNR. I don't really have an exact question for you there, or answer for you there, sorry. At this point, and Tyler can correct me if I'm wrong, there hasn't been any consideration of putting in any sort of wall or sound barrier through there outside of restoring it to a vegetated state. I believe when we met with DNR preliminarily and discussed this, you know, the aesthetics of the trail were important. Whether a wall would fit with that aesthetic feel versus what they have now and what they want, as well as likely the additional costs that would go with that, it hasn't really been considered at this point.
I would expect just from, you know, the trees that would go back or would be smaller, you know, just because you can't transplant large trees very easily. So they'd definitely be smaller, and, you know, it would obviously take time for them to get larger. So I guess it'll look different, but in the longer run, things will grow back, but it will take a while.
Yeah, it just seems like a big sound barrier is going to be removed there. Like the trees that are there now is a pretty big sound barrier for the community.
Any other questions? Well, hearing none, again, thank you to our presenters and thank you to those who joined us this evening. Again, this will be available on that webpage that Tyler shared earlier. So thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.